all of it. He's got his new show, Inside the Game, on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. The great Pierre McGuire joins us here. Good morning, Pierre. How are you, first of all? Second of all, how about yesterday?
Well, Chris, first of all, it's great to visit with you. Yesterday was phenomenal for the National Hockey League, for the growth of the game around the world. That's exactly how great our athletes are in this sport. They're competitive, they're intense, they're impervious to pain, they can handle pressure situations unbelievably well, and they know, especially when there's a flair for the dramatic, they all know how to perform at the highest levels. I thought yesterday was a fantastic day for everybody involved in a great game of hockey.
Yeah, I want to go to the Canadian game in a moment, but let's start with the afternoon game yesterday. And the U.S. ends up going to overtime to defeat Sweden. Quinn Hughes with the game winner in OT, which was just a great job of moving one direction. I heard Eddie Olczyk mention this on the broadcast yesterday. Moving one direction as you move through the slot and attack the goaltender, and shooting back in the opposite direction. You get the goalie moving one way, shoot back the other way, rang it off the pipe and in to win it for the U.S. But that was I don't want to call it a shaky third period. It felt like a very it felt like the third period they were playing that Mike Sullivan style that Mike Sullivan likes of, hey, we're not going to make any mistakes. Did they get too conservative, the Americans, in the third period yesterday, in your opinion?
Absolutely, they did, because they were so dominant in the second period. They had 20 shots on goal in the second period. They were dominant. Then they basically went into a passive resistance game. It doesn't work, especially against a good team that's urgent in a single elimination knockout game like Sweden. Sweden's got tremendous firepower. They got huge speed. They've got great accuracy coming out of their own zone. They would have been a better team if they would have had Victor Hedman yesterday. Obviously, they didn't have Victor. That made a big difference because they're big four on defense, starting with Gustav Forsling, going over to Rasmus Dahlin. You look at their top four on the back end, they're just so good. Without Victor Hedman, it's a big problem. So they weren't as good. But that was a good shot by Quinn. It's a 3-on-3 situation, a lot more ice available for him, especially playing against Gabriel Landeskog, who's not the quickest guy in the world. That's a coaching faux pas, I think, by the Swedish coaching staff. That's another story for another day, but it's a great shot by Quinn. He's as advertised. He's a spectacular player. He can handle 25 to 30 minutes, Chris, every game. If the United States is going to win the gold medal, he's going to have to be a focal point player for them, and he was yesterday.
Yeah, can they get away with that style of game against Slovakia? Because look, I don't think anybody walked into this tournament thinking Slovakia was going to end up medaling, or if they thought so, it was they would do it as an underdog, and they've done that. They've been the underdog. They've showed up. A lot of it has had to do with a very stingy game defensively. Samuel Levi, their goaltender, has been spectacular at times. Can the U.S. afford to go into the semifinal game against Slovakia playing as conservatively as they did in that third period yesterday against Sweden?
No, it'd be a terrible mistake. One of the things that I'm really encouraged about, Mike Sullivan might be the head coach of this team, but he's surrounded with some pretty aggressive guys. David Quinn's an aggressive guy. He used to work for me at a hockey school that I ran. John Tortorella is somebody that I coached a lot of games against back when I was a coach in the National Hockey League. And I got to tell you right now, Johnny Hines is an amazingly aggressive guy. Watch his Minnesota Wild team play. Watch his old New Jersey Devils teams play. Go watch the tape of his old Nashville Predators team. But I think the best line I ever heard was from John Tortorella when he won a Stanley Cup in 2004 in Tampa. Safe is death in hockey. And John preaches that all the time, and I got to think he's probably in Mike Sullivan's ear today saying, we can't do that again. So I'm really encouraged, actually, by this American team. I love the depth of their defense, the mobility of their defense. I love the fact they got a great role player in Brock Nelson playing deeper in the lineup. Their first three centers are all world. You start with Dylan Mark, who scored a huge goal. You look at Austin Matthews and the tournament that he's had. And I thought Jack Eichel has probably been their most consistent player. So the Americans have all the firepower you have to have, Chris, to win. Now they just got to put it forward in the game tomorrow against Slovakia.
Pierre McGuire with us here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Check out Inside the Game. It's available on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. First couple of episodes, Pierre has already talked to Bill Daly of the NHL, Mike Eruzione. Since we're talking about the Olympics, that was perfect timing. One more question about the American squad, Pierre, and then I want to pivot to Team Canada. Were you disappointed, or do you think Americans should have been disappointed, American hockey fans, that Jason Robertson wasn't a part of this squad?
I don't want to say disappointed because I don't want to do a disservice to any of the players that have been named to this team because I think it's such a hard team to make. And I respect every single guy that's on that team right now. And I know how hard a job it is for Billy Guerin. This is the 8th Olympics I've had the opportunity and privilege to cover. I know how hard it is to be part of that. So I never want to take anything away from anybody. Could Jason Robertson have been on this team? Absolutely. Could Cole Caulfield have been on this team? Absolutely, especially when you look at his prowess in 3-on-3 of overtime. He's just one of the best players in the National Hockey League when it comes to extra ice hockey, like 3-on-3 is. And could Lane Hudson have been on this team? Yeah, he could have been. Absolutely, he could have been. So are there 3 guys that didn't make the team that could have been on the team? Yes, but I wouldn't take away a jersey from any one of the guys that's playing there right now, Chris. The one really key thing is the role playing that's being created right now by the coaching staff for the players. The players now know exactly what their roles are within the confines of the team. And as long as everybody plays to the roles that have been created for them, Chris, then I think this team will be successful.
Now, for Team Canada, they're also in the semifinals despite getting a little bit of a scare against Czechia yesterday. You know, in recent history, Pierre, people have always looked at goaltending as sort of a delineation point between America and Canada. But Jordan Binnington had a massive game yesterday. And I think given what we've seen in the Olympics so far to this point, the 4 games that each of those 2 teams have played, it's not a knock against Connor Hellebuck. I think Binnington has looked just as good as Hellebuck if these 2 end up meeting in a gold medal game. How important has the goaltending being on point been to what Canada's been able to do, especially when they open it up offensively?
Really important. Such a good point by you. And I completely see the victory on the point already. Binnington's been great. He's been great for Team Canada. And Chris, I think the number one thing about Jordan, he wants the PPW. He wants to prove a lot of people wrong. He's had a very, very average season for the St. Louis Blues. He's part of the problem there right now, not part of the solution as we've gone forward through the first, 55 games of this National Hockey League season. Connor Hellebuck, again, Winnipeg underachieving. He's been part of the problem there, even though I know he's had some injuries. So both of them want to prove a lot to a lot of different people. The truth is, though, Binnington yesterday, if they don't have him in goal, they lose that game to Czechia. They lose that game big time. He played fantastically well, especially at key times in the game.
The great Pierre McGuire with us here on You Better You Bet. Check out Inside the Game. It's on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes as well. Pierre has been breaking down a ton of the Olympic content that we've gotten. The biggest story, obviously, out of the day yesterday, not just the overtime wins by Canada and the U.S., but Sidney Crosby getting hurt. And immediately, I'm a Pittsburgher, so immediately Penguin fans were up in arms. Oh, my God, I can't believe this. It was a former Flyer that hit him, too, Radko Gudas. But I said this morning earlier on the show. Sidney Crosby wants to be there. The professionals want to be there as a part of the Olympics. If there's one thing that may eclipse Sidney Crosby's love of hockey, it's love of country, and he wants to be out there representing Canada. So I'll start with this. Would you be at all surprised if even at less than 100%, Sid is out there either tomorrow for the semifinal game or finds a way back for the gold medal game if Canada is there?
As long as the doctors say that he won't do any further injury to his body and his ability to play down the road, I think Sidney Crosby will play. Now, I don't know the extent of the injury. It did not look good. Radko Gudas is a big, powerful man. He is. And if you look at Sid's right leg, and especially in the knee area, it doesn't look good when you see the still photos. So I don't know if it's an ACL. I don't know if it's an MCL. I have no idea what it is. It could be a lower body, to the tibia. I have no idea. And I don't even want to try to go there because my NBC training taught me a long time ago, you may have graduated from college, but you don't have a doctor's degree. So they're right about that. So I'm not going to try to pretend, Chris. But what I will tell you is Sidney Crosby does believe in everything you just said. You nailed that. And I just want people to understand, I did the Sochi games with Doc Emmerich and Eddie Olczyk and Kenny Albert. And what I remember the most is afterwards I heard from somebody in the IOC that told me, this is probably the last time NHL players will go. And that was that great Canadian team with Carey Price in goal and Jonathan Toews and Sidney Crosby and Chris Kunitz just to go Pittsburgh for a while. And I said, really? And I saw a lot of the Canadian players afterwards, and they said, hey, we're hearing rumors we might not be going back to the Olympics. I said, I just heard the same thing. And a bunch of them, and I won't tell you the names, said that would be the wrong thing. We want to be at the Olympics. And then obviously we found out probably a year later that they weren't going back. And I can tell you, the upper echelon of the player pool in the National Hockey League was really upset. And the league used that, to their credit, as a bargaining chip when they did their last collective bargaining agreement with the National Hockey League Players Association. And now they've got labor harmony. And I think a big reason why is the upper echelon players said, we want to go to the Olympics and we're going to do it. And if you don't do it, we're going to have labor disharmony. And we now have labor harmony, which is good, not bad.
I thought it was impressive also, Pierre. You know, you lose your captain the way the Canadians lost Crosby at that point in the game. And rather than sort of shrink or, fall back, it emboldened them even more. And you hear after the game, some of the guys talked about, we said to each other, we're not going to let this be Crosby's last game in the Olympics. There's no way we're losing this thing. But it wasn't just them going out and playing hard for the last 40 minutes or so after Crosby got hurt. It was them taking over the game. That second period after Crosby didn't come out was probably the most dominant period of hockey I've seen against another high-level opponent in these Olympics. And Canada showed that when they truly turn it on, they're capable of anything. I think a big key to that, I don't know what you think of Mack Celebrini. This kid, he looks like he's even younger than 19, but he plays like an animal. He's got the speed to go anywhere on the ice, and he's got the confidence to try and make any kind of play.
Yeah, so well said. So here's the biggest thing is when they put that super line together with McKinnon, McDavid, and Celebrini, I haven't seen a line like that since 1987 with the Canada Cup for Canada with Lemieux, Gretzky, and Michel Goulet. I have not, and I've coached a lot of big games, Stanley Cup finals. In 1992, the best line in the National Hockey League was Jeremy Roenick, Michel Goulet, and Steve Larmer. We did a number on them in Pittsburgh and swept them in 4 games, but I can tell you that line was formidable. Nobody's even close to this line since 1987. I mean, when they put them together, it's just an amazing weapon for Team Canada to have at their disposal, and how they utilize them. They utilize them at the end of every period, and they utilize them after the other team had a power play. So they're going out against lesser players, which is another thing too. No, Canada's really good, and part of it is they've got a lot of center icemen. So Crosby goes down, Nick Suzuki goes from being the right winger on the second line with Nathan McKinnon and with Brandon Hagel, and he goes in center, Stone and Marner, 2 guys from the Vegas Golden Knights, and Suzuki does an amazing job and scores a huge tying goal for Canada. There's a lot to like about their team. I think if we do get an American-Canada matchup, it'll be a game for the ages. I was there the last time we had it, 2010. It was an overtime game. I worked it with Doc Emmerich. Or actually, no, I worked it on Canadian TV with Chris Cuthbert. Doc Emmerich worked with Eddie Olczyk on NBC. But yeah, no, it was that was one for the ages. And I think if they play again in this Olympics, Chris, it'll be one for the ages as well.
Looking forward to the possibility on Sunday morning and getting up to enjoy it. Pierre, thanks so much for your time. Super appreciative of it. Love your insights. Check out Pierre's new show, Inside the Game, on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Perfect time to do so with the Olympics going on. Thanks again for your time, Pierre.
Oh, my gosh, Chris, anytime for you. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the Olympics. Enjoy the gold medal game today between Canada and the United States on the women's side. It'll be really good. It'll be really good.
We'll see if Canada can get off the schneid against the U.S. Women's wise as well. Pierre, great stuff from him. Again, check out his new show, Inside the Game, on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Some of the best Olympic memories you may have of watching the game. He mentioned 2010. Some of your favorite memories of watching Olympic hockey probably have Pierre involved in calling the game. A legend on the NBC broadcast for years. That Mack line, as they're calling it for Team Canada, is the difference. I don't know if the Americans can combat that. And if everything else is even, right? Like if Jordan Binnington stands tall between the pipes and outduels Connor Hellebuck, if you get quality play, quality two-way play from both sets of defensemen, and everything else is even, that's the difference, I think, that I fear as an American, that I fear for the Canadians if these two do meet in the gold medal game on Sunday morning, is the ability to put all of that high-end offensive talent out there together in key moments, as Pierre pointed out there, late in periods, coming off of a PK, all of those moments where you can put the Mack line out there, McDavid, McKinnon, Macklin, Celebrini together. I mean, think about it. Macklin, Celebrini, and Tyler and I talked about this off the air yesterday during one of the breaks when we were talking Olympic hockey. If you live anywhere east of the Mississippi, even as a hockey fan, you haven't had a chance to see a lot of Macklin Celebrini. The kid is only 19 and doesn't have a great roster built around him in San Jose right now. In 2 or 3 years, Macklin Celebrini will be a household name, not just for hockey fans, but I think even for the average sports fan, just because of the talent the guy has. Watch him, especially when he's out there with the top flight talent, McDavid and McKinnon, or on the Canadian power play where he took Crosby's spot after Crosby left the game yesterday. And a 19-year-old kid shouldn't be that comfortable in those spots, but he is. He's spinning around, throwing backhand passes toward the slot. Now, sometimes it's on a hope and a prayer and the pass doesn't go anywhere, and you don't want to do that too often because sometimes it'll lead to an odd man rush back the other way. But the level of confidence a 19-year-old kid has to have to be out there on the ice trying to make those plays with McKinnon, with McDavid, with Cale Makar, with some of the best players in the world. He's that confident because he is that good. And that could be the key difference, again, going into a gold medal game between the Canadian and U.S. teams is you can throw that guy out there on the power play or with McDavid and McKinnon. The U.S. has some firepower, but I don't know if they can match that in key moments. Again, the other part to worry about, too, and I said this a week ago, 2 weeks ago, coming into the Olympic hockey tournament, is Mike Sullivan, the American coach, will gladly, unfortunately, play the style of hockey that the Americans played in the third period yesterday, which is way too safe. You heard Pierre McGuire there mention that John Tortorella, who's one of the assistants for the American team and close friends with Mike Sullivan, said years ago, safe is death in hockey. The Americans have to open it up. They have to do what they did, for example, in the second period yesterday to Sweden more often. If they don't play that way against Slovakia, who will be happy to play a 2-1 hockey game, they could get upset. If they go on to the gold medal game and don't play that way against Canada, they won't be able to score the 3 or 4 goals necessary to win that game. The U.S. is not going to beat Canada 2-1. They're not. So you've got to open it up. You ain't going to play fire wagon hockey, all right? This isn't the 1987 Edmonton Oilers that you have to be. But you've got to open it up and let your offensive guys skate with the puck and create opportunities. And we'll see if Sullivan and the rest of the American coaching staff is willing to do that if there is that gold medal game against the Canadians on Sunday morning.